still recording, so. All right, we're back in session, and we're about to move into our business items. The first is item 8A, approval of a collective bargaining agreement with the Police Guild representing patrol officers for 2022 through 2024. Is there a motion? Councilmember Rosabetti.
I move to authorize the mayor to sign the 2022-2024 collective bargaining agreement between the City of Port Orchard and Police Guild representing the patrol officer employees.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Rosapepe, a second by Councilmember Terneri. Any discussion on this item? I'd just like to thank Miss Debbie Lund, our Human Resources Manager, and our labor attorney, Sophia Maybe, for their hard work on this contract, and our members of our guild, too, for the work that they do for us each and every day. All right, with that, you'll be voting on the collective bargaining agreement with the Police Guild representing patrol officers. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the agreement is approved. Item B now, to the approval of a collective bargaining agreement with the Police Guild representing sergeants for the 2022 through 2024 years. Councilmember Chang.
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the mayor to sign the 2022-2024 collective bargaining agreement between the City of Port Orchard and Police Guild representing the sergeant employees.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Chang, a second by Councilmember Diener. Is there any discussion? My comments ring true for this, for the same groups. You'll be voting on the bargaining agreement with our sergeants guilds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? For item C now, adoption of an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code, section 20.162.044, amending the definition of wetland isolation. Mr. Bond, this is yours.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of Council. In 2016, the City Council adopted Chapter 20.162, the city's Critical Areas Ordinance, which contains the standards and permitting requirements for development activity on lands and generally and adjacent to critical areas within the city. City staff are proposing to amend Section 20.162044, definitions generally, to provide clarity on requirements related to providing determinations of isolated wetlands. Currently, the definition in POMC 20.162044 requires a determination from the United States Army Corps of Engineers that a wetland is isolated. This definition was based on guidance from the Washington Department of Ecology, but since city adoption of this chapter, DOE has backed off their definition. DOE recognizes that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers does not necessarily need to make the determination that a wetland is isolated, but that certain development activities impacting an isolated wetland may still require Army Corps of Engineer approval. The proposed change to the definition creates a pathway for determining if a wetland is isolated based on best available science without awaiting a U.S. Army Corps of Engineer determination. The city's SEPA responsible official issued a determination of non-significance on May 6, 2022. The DCD did not receive any comments related to the proposed or related to the DNS, and the city provided the DNS and the proposed code amendment to the Washington State Department of Commerce for review on May 5, 2022. The Planning Commission held a public hearing to solicit public input and provide a recommendation to the City Council on June 7, 2022. Staff provided notice of hearing consistent with the requirements of the city's code on May 24, 2022, and did not receive any comments regarding the proposed amendment. The Planning Commission provided a recommendation to the City Council to adopt the amendment to the definition of isolated wetland as presented. The staff recommendation is that the City Council adopt an ordinance amending the definition of isolated wetland as presented.
Councilmember Diener.
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code 20.162.044, amending the definition of wetland isolated as presented.
Second.
Councilmember Diener, second by Councilmember Rosapepe. Any questions for Mr. Bond on this? because he's the subject matter expert, not me. All right. Be voting on an ordinance amending Port Orchard Municipal Code related to wetland, the definition of wetland isolated. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. We're to item D, adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Stripe Bright Inc. for the 2022 thermoplastic applications. And this is Mr. Dorsey, who's pitch hitting tonight.
I believe Mr. Lang might be on Zoom.
Lang.
Mayor pinch it.
Is that Jackie that's on there?
Jackie? Jackie, are you filling in for Mark? Yeah, she's got her hand up. Look at that.
Yeah.
Technology. Guess you should ask this question before now.
We're still getting used to the technology.
We can hear you now.
Great, thank you. Good evening, council and mayor. The City of Port Orchard updates thermoplastic pavement marking applications in the city on an annual basis. By this resolution, the city council would authorize the mayor to execute a contract with Stripe Bright Incorporated for the 2022 thermoplastic application project. To select Stripe Bright for this project on April 28th, 2022, Public Works staff established a list of qualified contractors from the 2022 MRSC Small Works roster for the main category roadway construction, repair and maintenance, and subcategory asphalt paving, grinding, planing, and pulverization, pavement markings. A copy of that list of qualified contractors is attached to the resolution as Exhibit A. On May 6, 2022, and pursuant to the city's procurement policies adopted by resolution number 036-22, as amended, see section 5 bid procedures, the city's Public Works Department issued an email invitation to bid to 5 qualified contractors on the selected roster. 2 bids were received by the May 23, 2022, 1 p.m. deadline, at which time staff determined Stripe Bright Incorporated was the presumed responsive and qualified low bidder. Final bid amounts were as follows. Specialized Pavement Markings LLC, $70,998.80, and Stripe Bright Incorporated, $63,165. On May 23rd, 2022, the city's Public Works Department staff completed the MRSC mandatory bidder responsibility checklist and determined that the Stripe Bright Incorporated bid of $63,165, applicable tax included, was the lowest responsive and responsible qualified bid. The Public Works Department has confirmed that the bidding procedures for Public Works have been followed. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt resolution number 058-22, authorizing the mayor to execute contract number C053-22 with Stripe Bright Incorporated for the 2022 thermoplastic application project in the amount of $63,165.
Councilmember Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 058-22, authorizing the mayor to execute contract number C053-22 with Stripe Bright Inc. for the 2022 plastic application project in the amount of $63,165.
Second.
By Councilmember Clausen, a second by Councilmember Lucarelli. Do you have any questions for Ms. Brown on this? Councilmember Rosepepe.
Actually, I have a question for Noah, because I'm sure I'm going to show my ignorance in here. It says that we're going to have a budget amendment needed. Is that because of money that we appropriated last year? Because this contract shows less than the 80,000 budgeted. So I was just curious whether it's because of the total amount in 2021 and 2022.
Yes, that's correct. Because the cost came in higher than we originally budgeted.
Okay.
I made the comment that a budget amendment might be needed.
Okay, yeah, I didn't realize if we were adding the 2021 in there, or the 80,000 was just for this year. So it's the combined years that's pushing us over budget then. Okay.
Well, I believe we were over budget in 21 and 22.
Yeah. Okay.
But like we always do, we monitor throughout the second biennial period. So this
Right.
year we'll continue to monitor. As we towards the end of the year, we'll do a cleanup budget amendment if we need to.
Right.
So.
Okay, thank you. Answered my question.
Good question. Other questions or comments? All right. You'll be voting on the option of an of a resolution approving a contract with Stripe Bread Inc. for the thermoplastic application. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the contract has been approved. We're to item E, adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Art Anderson Associates for the 390s zone low-pressure booster station project. Ms. Brown, I assume as a utility manager, you're taking this one too.
I am, thank you, Mayor. The city identified the need for the design and construction of a 390 zone low-pressure booster station for the city's water system for the project. Accordingly, on February 7th, 2022, upon receiving approval for the project from Washington State Public Works Board and pursuant to the city's procurement policies for architectural and engineering professional services, resolution number 036-22, the city's Public Works Department established a list of qualified firms for the design of the project from the 2022 MRSC consultant roster for the main category, engineering services, and subcategory, water system planning and design. On February 16, 2022, Public Works staff issued an emailed request for qualifications, RFQ, to 10 qualified consultants selected from the MRSC roster for the project's roster. The city did not receive any project-specific statements of qualification by the March 8, 2022, 2 p.m. deadline. Consistent with RCW 39.80.040 and the city's procurement policies and procedures for the procurement of engineering contracts, on March 25, 2022, Public Works staff evaluated the statements of qualifications on file with MRSC for the firms on the project's roster and determined that Art Anderson Associates Incorporated met the requirements and criteria as described in the RFQ and was the most highly qualified for the project. On April 13, 2022, Public Works staff met via Zoom with Art Anderson Associates Incorporated to discuss, clarify, and develop the project understanding and the associated contract terms. On May 27, 2022, the city received a defined scope of work, budget, and project timeline for the project from the consultant in an amount of $205,041. Staff recommends adoption of resolution number 057-22, approving contract numbers C081-22 with Art Anderson Associates Incorporated for the 390 zone low-pressure booster station project design in the amount of $205,041 and documenting the professional services procurement procedures.
Councilmember Lucarelli.
I move to adopt resolution number 057-22, authorizing the mayor to execute contract number C081-22 with Art Anderson Associates, Inc. for the 390 zone low-pressure booster station project design in the amount of $205,041.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Lucarelli, second by Councilmember Clausen. Do you have any questions of Ms. Brown on this project?
No, just looking at our agenda, thank you to Jackie for pinch hitting for Mark.
Yes, thank you, Jackie. All right. Any further questions? All right, you'll be voting on a resolution approving a contract with Art Anderson Associates for the 390 zone low-pressure booster station project. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the contract has been approved. We're to item F, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Kitsap Transit for the Guaranteed Ride Home program. This is Ms. Lund, and I imagine that Mr. Clausen wants to recuse himself.
Thank you and good evening. I'm actually handling this item on the behalf of Elizabeth Spalding. She's the HR specialist as she is our designated employee transportation coordinator. The City of Port Orchard participates in the commute trip reduction program, which encourages employees to use transportation to and from work other than a single occupant vehicle. To promote participation, the city has enrolled in Kitsap Transit's Guaranteed Ride Home, which provides an immediate ride home to the aforementioned commuters in case of an emergency. Kitsap Transit has provided an update to the previous Guaranteed Ride Home program dated in 2013. The attached agreement would continue the city's participation in the program. It's important to note that the city's only financial obligation under this agreement is that we would pay $20 in the event that one of our employees calls for the service and ends up being a no-show. Otherwise, the program is funded by Kitsap Transit. So staff is recommending that the council authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with Kitsap Transit regarding the Guaranteed Ride Home program to continue our participation.
Councilmember Diener.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Kitsap Transit for the Guaranteed Ride Home program.
Motion by Councilmember Diener, second by Councilmember Trenary. Any discussion?
Question. What's been the usage of the program?
To our knowledge, none. We do have some registered commuters who would be eligible. In my experience, typically in those emergency situations, there's usually a coworker or something
Sure.
that's willing to help out.
No, I think it's a great safety net. I was just curious what our usage had been. I fully support this.
I am, as Debbie is, I'm aware of a couple of van pools participants, but I've never seen this program be used. But it, like you said, it's a good safety net.
And it takes the edge off of whether you're thinking about commuting and that safety net, yeah.
Other questions? All right, you'll be voting on the adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Kitsap Transit for the Guaranteed Ride Home program. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the agreement is approved.
Thank you, Cindy.
And we're gonna need to get an extension cord to get that TV closer because the cord's only 3 feet long, so. Tried to move it, and so we had power constraints, so we'll work on that. The data and video lines is plenty long, but the power cord isn't, so. All right, we're on to item G, approval of road closures for the special event, the cruise. Ms. Wallace.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. City staff received a special event application for the cruise scheduled for Sunday, August 14th, 2022. In that application, it states that it is being put on by the Saints Car Club, and the event is called The Cruise. It's a car show. Again, Sunday, August 14th, 2022. They will begin their setup on the morning of August 14th at 6 a.m. and will open to the public at 10 a.m. and close at 4 p.m. with a tear down to be completed by 6 p.m. that day. The location of the event is downtown Port Orchard along Bay Street, State Route 166 from Kitsap Street to Orchard Street, as well as the waterfront and gazebo parking lots, commonly known as the city lots number 2, 3, and 4. Closures consist of Bay Street, State Route 166 from Kitsap Street to Orchard Street, Port Street, Frederick Avenue, and parking lots between the 700 block of Sydney Parkway in front of the Port Orchard, the Port of Bremerton Marina office to the gazebo area parking lot, which is behind the Peninsula Feed. The required notice pursuant to Port Orchard Municipal Code Chapter 5.96.050 subsection 3 states that allowing citizens to provide written comments regarding how allowing that special event will impact their property, business, or quality of life has been published, and to date there has been no received concerns submitted to the clerk's office regarding this event taking place. Staff and outside agencies have reviewed the application and is still working towards ensuring safety measures are in place. Pursuant to Port Orchard Municipal Code Chapter 5.94.050 subsection 4, which was recently amended by the City Council last year, staff shall bring forward this special event application for the council to consider and approve when the event requires a street or state highway closure. With that, staff supports the application upon the event meeting the required necessary public safety and traffic control provisions.
Councilmember Trenary.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the road closures for the cruise scheduled for Sunday, August 14th, 2022, as presented.
By Councilmember Trenary, second by Councilmember Clausen. Are there any questions? Councilmember Chang.
Yes, Randy, can you just remind me what the required notice is? Like, when did it go out and what was the deadline? I was looking in the packet really quickly and I didn't see.
I can tell you if you give me just a moment.
Okay.
Followed our code.
Oh, I know. I just was curious what it was, like.
So the code doesn't state how long we have to publish it, but our standard process is 2 weeks, 10 days to 14 days. So the advertisement was published May 26th, identifying the Festival by the Bay and the cruise. Published on May 26th, like I said, and we accepted comments until June 9th.
And that's also on the website as well as, I guess, the Sun, when you say advertise.
We don't publish, let me double check if we publish it in the, we put it on our website, we put it out to our special notice list serve, I guess, Facebook. Yeah, so our website, which is our events and news page, our Facebook, and then we publish notice through our email distribution list that want that sign up.
I don't have a question, but I'm very happy to support this. The cruise is an amazing event, and I think the Saints are a well-oiled machine in putting this on. It's wonderful for the city.
Other comments or questions? All right, hearing none. Voting on the approval of a road closure for the special event, the cruise. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Has been approved. Item H, approval of a road closure for a special event, Fathoms of Fun Festival by the Bay. Ms. Wallace.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. So again, the clerk's office received a special event application, and it should be one special event application, regarding the Fathoms of Fun Festival by the Bay, which is scheduled also for Sunday, August 14th. It is an event that is put on by Fathoms of Fun, and again, the name of the event is Festival by the Bay. It is a craft and food vendor fair. Setup starts that morning at 6 a.m. and is open to the public at 9 a.m. and will close at 4 p.m. with their tear down to be completed by 6 p.m. The location of the event is downtown Port Orchard along Bay Street, State Route 166. And the road closures consist of Bay Street, State Route 166 from Orchard Street to Harrison Avenue. Again, staff is required pursuant to Port Orchard Municipal Code 5.96.050 subsection 3, allows citizens to provide written comments regarding how allowing this event will impact their property, business, or quality of life has been published, and to date, the city has not received any concerns regarding this event taking place. And I will point out that the Port Orchard Bay Street Association, as well as the Chamber of Commerce, are included on those email distribution lists, so that way businesses have the opportunity to weigh in on those events. So staff and outside agencies have reviewed the application and are working towards ensuring that the event will abide by the safety measures that will be in place. And pursuant to Port Orchard Municipal Code Chapter 5.94.050 subsection 4, again recently amended by the council last year, staff shall bring forward the special event application for the council to consider and approve to close this event as it is a street or highway closure request. Therefore, staff supports the application upon the event organizer meeting the required necessary public safety and traffic control provisions.
Crowley.
I move to approve the road closures for the Fathoms of Fun Festival by the Bay scheduled for Sunday, August 14th, 2022 as presented.
Second it.
Motion by Councilmember Lizarelli and a second by Councilmember Trenary. Any questions or comments?
Comment, and it's directed to Sharon King. And I want to thank you for your perseverance in putting on an event or trying to put on an event these last several years and riding with the wave of uncertainty. So looking forward to this parade this year.
Comments or questions? Okay, you'll be voting on the approval of road closure for the special events Fathoms of Fun Festival on the Bay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Item I, approval of a special event time submittal waiver, the Kitsap County Cornhole Classic. Ms. Wallace, this is you.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. Staff received a special event application for a Kitsap County Cornhole Classic event scheduled for Sunday, August 7th, 2022. The application is an event called the Kitsap County Cornhole Classic. It's a sporting event, again, to be held on August 7th, open to the public at 9 a.m. and will close at 6 p.m. with the setup starting up at 7 a.m. and a tear down completed by 7 p.m. Location is to be held downtown Port Orchard, and it is considered a lot closure, commonly known as Parking Lot 4, owned by the city, which is behind Peninsula Feed. As you may recall, in last year's code revision, the expedited process for applications was removed, and despite staff's effort to communicate this change to historical event organizer, this event organizer was unaware of the change. Since there are no provisions to allow grandfathered event holders an exemption of the time requirement, the applicant is seeking council to modify the permit requirement by waiving the time restriction of submitting an application 90 calendar days before the date of the special event to take place, as outlined in Port Orchard Municipal Code 5.94.030 subsection 3. So due to the timing of the adoption of the new deadline, there are no other events that staff is aware of that would impact this waiver should the council approve. So with that, staff recommends the council approve the waiver of the application submitted as presented.
Rosa Pepe.
Mr. Mayor, I move to waive the submittal requirement outlined in POMC 5.94.030 subsection 3 for the Kitsap County Cornhole Classic taking place on August 7th, 2022, and allow staff to route the application in accordance with the rest of POMC 5.94.
Second.
By Councilmember Rosa Pepe, a second by Councilmember Diener. Questions for Ms. Wallace on the go ahead, Councilmember Rosa Pepe.
No, I actually wanted to say I think that, not 100% sure, but I think last year when we talked about this, that we talked about we take waivers as they come, and we knew that with the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, that we would possibly have some people that we'd ask for waivers as applications would come in with events starting again. So I strongly support this, and should we have other applications, I would be supportive of them. My question actually is directed to the mayor. Do you plan on being a finalist at the cornhole this year?
You know, made it through the semifinals last year, so
Right.
I don't know that I'll make the finals. So, but yes, you know, we want to process these applications. We want to have these events. You know, this isn't a parking lot and not impacting street closures, that thing of nature. But the more complicated events, we really do need that
Absolutely.
90 days to route it through fire, police, and public works, and everybody, and make sure that you know, we're doing these events properly. But I don't have any concerns with this particular one because it's just in a parking lot. So, other questions or comments? All right, you'll be voting on the approval of a special event time submittal waiver for the Kitsap Cornhole Classic. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the approval of the waiver has been granted. We're to item J, adoption of a resolution approving amendment number 2 to contract number 040-12 with Kitsap County for emergency management services. Ms. Archer, this is you.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Before the council this evening is adoption of a resolution that would amend an existing contract with Kitsap County and other local partners for emergency management services. As you all are aware, local jurisdictions are required to establish a local organization for emergency management, and you have done so with your partner agencies, Kitsap County and the cities of Bremerton, Bainbridge Island, and Paulsbo since 2012. That agreement has been in place since that time and has been amended a number of times. The agreement as drafted and as previously amended expired in November of 2020. However, emergency management was obviously busy at that time, and all parties continued to operate as though the agreement were still in place. Accordingly, Kitsap County has requested that the city execute an amendment that retroactively extends the term of the agreement to 2020, or it will be indefinite until terminated. So we won't run into this issue in the future. This extension or this amendment would modify the term of the agreement, and that is the primary modification suggested. And again, the term would now be until terminated, which is consistent with interlocal agreements of this nature. You are authorized under state law, under the Interlocal Agreement Act, to enter into these types of cooperative arrangements. So staff's recommendation is that the council authorize this amendment to the existing Emergency Management Services Agreement. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mary.
I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the second amendment to contract number 040-12, an interlocal agreement for emergency management services.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Trenary, second by Councilmember Lucarelli. We just don't want to have our own emergency management department, so we're happy to have an agreement with Kitsap County for it, and I'm happy to participate on their board. So Councilmember Rose Pepe.
I know this is probably just stating it for the public, but Charlie, when you talked about that this would go on into the future, it could be brought back should there be a fiscal impact at some point in time. You know, there's no reason that it couldn't come back to us if there was a fiscal impact to the city.
Yes, absolutely. I should have been clear. It's until terminated, and the city has discretion to terminate in the extent of lack of appropriation or for whatever reason you choose to sever that relationship.
Thank you for the clarification.
Absolutely.
And that process is typically our budget process. Those dues come forward from all of these county-wide policy boards that I typically sit on. They submit their dues requests, they're embedded in the budget process and then approved in that manner. So, other questions? All right, you'll be voting on adoption of a resolution approving amendment number 2 to contract number 040-12 with Kitsap County for emergency management services. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the resolution has been approved. We are to our last business item, approval of amendment number 4 to contract number 075-20 with Rice Fergus Miller, Inc. for the 2020-2021 City Hall Improvement Project additional scope. Ms. Brown, are you still with us in pitch hitting from Mr. Dorsey? Councilmember Diener.
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the mayor to execute amendment number 4 to contract number C075-20 with Rice Fergus Miller Incorporated for the 2020-2021 City Hall Improvement Project in an amount of $23,650.
Councilmember Diener, second by Councilmember Clausen. And this amendment is really about, and it alludes to it, we need to do, we've got a large solar array that we're going to put over the parking lot, and we want that solar array to stay up in an earthquake or other events. So we need to do some geotechnical work to make sure that the footings and everything are designed appropriately for that solar array. Any other questions or comments? We're getting close to going out to bid, hopefully by the end of the year, and we'll only have to survive one more winter with our cold, drafty windows. We're hopeful. So, all right, with that, you'll be voting on approval of contract number 4 with Rice Fergus Miller, Inc. for the City Hall Improvement Project additional scope. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that the contract has been amended. All right, since we don't have a work study next week, we have a few discussion items tonight, and the first of which is transportation funding. At our last city council meeting, we talked about our survey and that transportation or traffic was the highest priority that was identified in the survey from our community. We left and we said, well, we're going to go out and see what we could do with the scope for a potential ballot measure. And we have a manager's meeting at 9 o'clock Wednesday mornings after council meetings. And I think Nick Bond stayed up all night, and he came to that meeting with this detailed proposal and all the things that we could do. And Noah and I both went kind of, whoa, you know, we got to figure out how we're going to pay for this. But I'm embellishing a little bit, but it's pretty accurate. And so as we dug into this, and as our lobbyist alluded to, we knew about the additional 10 years that the legislature authorized, but we were unaware of the ability for a 1/10 councilmatic measure that became available just this last session. So we've laid some scenarios out here, and scenario 1 is the city council passing a councilmatic 1/10, which can only be in play, it sunsets after 10 years, the councilmatic. It's about $850,000-ish. The second page that I'm not going to go over in detail is all of the math behind all of these assumptions that the finance department did for us. So over 3 years, we could generate between $2.5 and $2.75 million from the councilmatic action. We have this particular Bethel Phase 1 project, which is the 2 roundabouts between at Salmonberry, at Blueberry, the road in between, and this design would also include the bypass that goes to Ramsey to tie in to Sedgwick. It's eligible for a little over $2 million in traffic impact fees. We have the impact fee funds from Blueberry. So we have, from these 3 sources, we would have between 4.7 and $5 million in revenue available for design and right-of-way. In our scenario 1, we would propose that we would do a 100% design on this Bethel Phase 1, acquire the right-of-way, and we believe that we can get that done for $5 million. So at the end of that 3-year period, and the designs are complete, we will have 100% design, and we will have solid numbers to go out to bid with. We'll have, because we'll have our right-of-way acquired, should have our right-of-way acquired, and we should have good numbers to have a more robust conversation. So an option could be to run a 2/10 measure at this point in time, which would wipe away the 1/10. It could generate potentially $27 million, or at that point in time, 3 years from now, we stay with, we we discover that the remaining 7 years will give us enough money to build Bethel Phase 1, and we don't need the second 1/10, and that we're able to build that project in its entirety. We don't have solid numbers at this point because, one, we haven't acquired all the right-of-way. We believe the revenue, based on our sales tax growth, will generate between $8 and $11 million. And after the design, we would have between 5 and 8 million, at a top end of $8 million remaining. So we believe at this point that it's $12 million to construct that phase 1. If we remove the bypass portion on Ramsey, it's a $10 million project. So we believe also we have enough impact fee dollars. We will have collected enough impact fee dollars at the end of the 3-year period also to design Bethel Phase 4, which is the Lund and Bethel intersection, and start moving forward with the design of that if we chose the 2/10 measure, or we waited until we paid off the Phase 1 project before we moved to a Phase 2 project. But at this time, based on our conversations at the staff level, we think it would be prudent to move forward with a 1/10 measure for at least this our clock tower. Not very often we hear that. For that 3-year period, get our design done, get our right-of-way acquired, and then evaluate where we're at and what the funding needs are, and either continue with the 1/10 measure or educate our public and ask them for that additional 1/10 to fund that project and something beyond that. So that's what we learned since our last council meeting. And as I said, the finance department did some financial analysis that ties into this on the second page of this. So questions or comments of me? Councilmember Chang?
Thank you for summarizing a lot of information into a relatively straightforward narrative. Is there any way we could get a flow chart just summarizing what you've said? Because I think that would be easier for me to grasp if it's like, here's option A, here's option B, here's 1%, here's 2%. And then we just restating it in a visual format, is that possible?
I guess we could. I mean, I did somewhat in the memo, but if it's difficult to follow. But we can work on something of that nature. Councilmember Rosa Pepe?
I know it's not, it's anecdotal in nature, but I will tell you that most of my comments that I hear when I'm in the grocery store or downtown is about Bethel. And I don't really like putting things on ballots, but to a certain extent, I think that the expectation, at least to the people I'm talking to, is sooner the better. And I'm not so sure that we need to have a robust discussion about accelerating more so than accelerating the projects instead of phasing them in at a slower rate, saying we're not going to be done till 2030, 2035.
The beauty of this recommendation is it gives us the time to get our ducks in order to go to a ballot measure. Allows us to collect some money, complete the designs, because we tried to be on November's ballot with a 2/10 measure, and when there's actually an option for a 3/10 measure, I don't know how successful we would be because we don't have our ducks in order. We don't know what this is going to cost. We don't know what the right-of-way is going to cost, and this can get us with a complete package for at least one element of it, and then funding, move forward with the designs on other elements after we get to that point. But I agree with you that we should move forward quickly, at least on this 1/10 measure.
Okay, so maybe, and I'm sorry if somebody had their hand raised beforehand. So my confusion, I guess, may be, and this may go back to what Fred has said about, having kind of a flow chart. My understanding is we would not possibly go out to the public for future funding for 3 years.
That is the recommendation, is to put a 1/10 measure
Right.
on councilmatically.
Okay.
That generates $850,000 a year.
Right.
Put that money to work, getting 100% design and the right-of-way acquired for phase 1 of Bethel. And then at the end of that 3-year period, we will have that design, we will have solid numbers to communicate to the public about a larger measure, or we could discover through this design process, probably not likely, that we have enough from this 1/10, or we've paid for all of our other projects and we've got a couple $1 million in REIT or other funding source to augment this, and we're able to move forward with and just build it with local dollars.
So are we looking at taking it to a work study down the road, or when are you looking at bringing this to council?
We don't have a work study next month.
Right.
I'm looking for
That's a-
direction from you guys. I think we need to have a public hearing. We need to
Yes.
have a process for this. We just can't do it. You know, and as, you know, flipping back to our prior meeting, the beauty of this funding measure, type of measure, it's everybody that drives and shops the Bethel corridor is paying for the corridor versus just the 16,000, you know, if we do something on property taxes or car tabs, we're only taxing the 16,000 people that live in the city of Port Orchard. More people than that shop and drive that corridor, and a sales tax measure, you know, harnesses that activity that's going on primarily on the Bethel corridor and puts it to work into a transportation package.
Then I would request, very similar to Fred, of having a little bit more visual.
I would also like this to be discussed in an informal way at the Transportation Committee. I hear what you're saying about, there are people who want it to happen now, you know, sooner, and they don't understand the planning of 3 years. They're sort of thinking, you know, we should do it now. I agree with you, Rob, that we do need to have our ducks in a row, and that putting it out, we couldn't put it out this year. We know that. There's not enough time, we're not ready. But, you know, maybe there's other options that could get it out sooner. I share your impatience. And I'd say the area is very impatient for this to happen. And we know.
It's an email that I respond to quite frequently. and the reason this hasn't ended up in the committee, this was our last council meeting. We had this discussion, and I said I'd come back with some recommendations, and we unearthed something that we didn't intend to, and it's slightly different than what we thought. So Councilmember Diener, and then I'll call on Councilmember Clausen.
Okay, so you had said that a work study's canceled next month?
Next week.
Next week, okay. Because I also thought it would be good to go to work study, but is that pushing it for you then?
You mean
We can have it in
July?
July's work study. That's
Okay.
completely doable. Yeah.
Okay, and then I think also seeing the information presented another way would be helpful as well.
Graphics. Councilmember Clausen.
All of your colors. My comment would be similar to Jay's. I think sooner than later is a good thing, because not only is this of great interest for our community, and certainly we heard that through the survey, but as we all know, things aren't getting cheaper, whether it be design fees or right-of-way. So the sooner we act, I think the sooner we would benefit from doing that. I agree that we need to have a much more robust public discussion on this before even the councilmatic, like you suggest, maybe a public hearing or something of that nature, giving the community an opportunity to at least come and share. I guess one question that I would have is, the councilmatic is for 10 years, but would the council have the ability to renew that?
Yes. It has to sunset first, and then a new
So
one.
we couldn't extend it 3 years from now for an additional 3 years?
We don't believe so, no. And the 20-year option is only available with the voter approved measure, and I believe only when we do bond indebtedness. So there's pluses and minuses to both. We could harness $25 to $27 million. It would wipe out all of our borrowing capacity. And whether or not we want to do that or not needs to be a very conscious decision.
Mayor? Just real quick, John, you said 3 years. I think the Councilmatic is for 10 years, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
So
He is suggesting that the design effort would take 3 years,
Right.
at which point I asked, could we then extend it another 3 years? or do we have
Oh,
to
past,
at any time.
past the 10 years.
10
Okay,
years? So
okay,
that
yeah.
would be my question.
Thank
So
you.
the proposal, and I'm sorry I didn't communicate it better, is pass the 1/10, use the first 3 years for design and right-of-way for phase one. Once we have that design, the right-of-way acquired and the design completed, we'll have better numbers and know what this is gonna cost us. That's our check-in to say, we can, do we want to continue for the remaining 7 years of the Councilmatic? Or do we need to do something bigger than that and go to the voters? So it's a decision point 3 years out after we have design and right-of-way for phase one. Councilor Clausen?
I'm assuming that if this was done councilmatically, that we could rescind that at some point. So as you're suggesting, if at 3 years we have the package ready to go to the voters and the voters approve a 2/10, then we could rescind our 1/10. So they're actually only adding one additional 10.
Yes, that's the way we understand it. Yes.
Clearly, there's a lot of questions that I think a work study would be helpful, especially giving us a little bit more time to kind of think it.
This is first,
Yeah.
first presentation of this. And, I brought this up at one of our regional meetings in the good of the order, and all the other mayors and the county commissioners, all their eyebrows shot up. Nobody else knows about this either. So there's a 3/10 option, but I don't think it would be wise for, in particular, our businesses that sell larger ticket items. If everybody else in the county and throughout the state passes 1/10 and 2/10, a 1/10 difference probably doesn't adversely affect your businesses, but 2/10 on major goods would put our local businesses at an economic disadvantage. So we've got to be mindful of that too in these discussions. So, all right, more to come. Noah's gonna whip out a fabulous PowerPoint presentation for the July work study
Good colors.
with colors, the colors that Councilmember Chang approves of.
High contrast colors, please.
All right, let's move on then. So with Zoom is brought, as we heard tonight, Mr. Dorsey's, out on some medical leave, and we had Ms. Brown pitch hitting for him and doing it virtually. I can see consultants doing that, but I think this is your meeting, and I just wanted to have some conversations with you guys about remote attendance. Currently, you're allowed to miss 2 meetings a year for personal reasons within our code. That's my understanding of it. And there isn't a limit if it's for business purposes, if your job calls you out of town. I just want to hear from you. We're happy to draft whatever language you want in a code, but Charlie and I want to hear from you guys on what you guys think is appropriate. My guess is I don't think you guys want to allow somebody to attend virtually all the time, but an occasional meeting, and what is occasional and how many times a year is that, is the question. So Councilmember Clausen?
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at it from 2 different perspectives. The first one is you not attending, period. That's what the current policy addresses, versus you attending virtually. You're still a participant, whether it's virtually or here in person. So I think they're 2 separate issues completely in my mind.
But I just felt it's going to be easier. This council, we're all working very well together, and issues like this are easier to solve if there is something to solve.
Well, I agree that there's an issue that we need to talk about, but I think it's 2 separate issues.
And that's perfect. I was just pointing out what our current policies allow today. And Sarsha, do you want to speak maybe to what other you're seeing in other for other clients that you're serving.
Yeah, absolutely. And to contextualize the conversation a bit more with the code provision, so you are actually allowed to completely miss 4 meetings before you are subject to a evaluation by a committee of the council and your conduct. And then remote attendance is only under your current provision, only permitted at the mayor's authorization or the mayor pro tem's authorization in the event that 3 criteria are met, one of which is the existence of an emergency for public health or safety, that your remote attendance is for the benefit of the city, and that the measure to be voted on should not be delayed. So there is a relatively high threshold currently for you to attend remotely, and your remote attendance would not count against your 4 absences. But that is, now to speak to the question of what other agencies are doing, it's running the gamut. So the recent change in the law that your lobbyist spoke to this evening, the recent change to the OPMA authorizes you to attend remotely and to have a hybrid approach to your meetings. And there is no statutory cap on the number of meetings that you can attend remotely. The requirement is that there be a physical meeting occurring so that members of the public can attend in person. But again, this is, as I said, is running the gamut. So some larger agencies that I'm familiar with, some of the counties that I'm familiar with are having 1 to 2 to 3 members present in chambers. The rest are attending remotely. For committee meetings, they're having no one attend in person. They're all attending remotely, but they're having staff open the door for the members of the public. Some cities are requiring attendance without exception. Some are absolutely allowing flexibility for remote attendance as much as possible. I see it really depending on the level of sophistication and the technology that is available to the agency. If you are able to actively participate in the same manner as you would in the room via the technology resources you have, I think agencies or boards are seeing less of a drop-off due to remote attendance. But it's absolutely the case that communication is when you're going through this hybrid approach. I think agencies that I've been working with that have been in a hybrid model, there's delay issues, there's audio issues that can cause discussion to be hindered by remote attendance. But it is the council, a majority of the council could vote to modify the rule and make remote attendance at a different level or with different requirements. You could adopt those different requirements as you saw fit, but that would have to be an action of the majority of the council, as it will require a code modification.
Yeah, I would just point out that when that policy was implemented, that was pre-COVID and pre-experience with current levels of technology. So personally, I don't have a problem with participating remotely. Pick on a couple folks, but there's been a couple members here that have participated quite well from out of the state, and it worked just fine. Personally, I think I get a lot more of personal being here in person to communicate with you guys over versus a monitor, but that's the individual's choice. I don't see that it would be detrimental to the conducting of city business by some being remote, some not. I just think the flexibility that we've learned with technology is quite available.
When it works.
Well, we do have this issue that we're refining, but it's working pretty well.
We're doing pretty well. Councilmember Lucarelli?
I think a number of us are at an age where we're dealing with family issues other places, and I'm definitely in that position. This year will be pretty challenging for me in the next several months. But I would love the opportunity to stay involved and have in the past. So I think that, I would be asking the council to allow me that. I always schedule my trips when I can, right after the last council meeting, so that I miss few or have to be away few. But personally for me, it would be a real help if I knew that I had a little flexibility.
Councilmember Rosepepe?
I agree both with Cindy and John, but I really agree with the comment that, you know, we get a lot from seeing each other and the nuances of our body language that you can't grasp over technology. I think that our current policy or procedure gives the latitude for emergencies and health issues, you know, people calling in remotely, and I empathize after last year about calling in. So I think we're there with our current policy. I don't think we need to make a change right now, the way I see it. So I'd just like to keep the status quo.
And I'm just facilitating, this is your guys' your policy, so. Councilmember Chang.
I would like to say I respectfully disagree with Mr. Rosa Pepe.
fine.
I would actually go the other way and say that I'm more concerned about a council member being a resident of the city of Port Orchard, no matter where they're attending a meeting from. I actually attended one from California because we were doing Zoom, and the funny thing is I didn't even have to tell you I was in California because we were all remote. That was a single case. So I would probably urge some relaxation of the current where you need the three conditions that Charlie's brought up. Maybe to once or twice a month if we had to
We have.
quantify something.
Yeah, we only have 2 business meetings a month. You know, it's your guys' meeting, but I think work study is working pretty well remotely. If we, you know, we could have, I guess it is a meeting though, and it would fall under, it's not a business meeting.
It is, it counts, it's, these rules apply to regular, special, or work study meetings.
Okay, so it does apply. The committees, we're currently not holding those in person. We are holding those remotely, and anybody, member of the public, can attend through the Zoom link because there isn't a quorum of the council at a committee meeting. There's only 3 council members, so that's not any type of a business meeting. So we've got 3 meetings a month. You've got it, and Councilmember Clausen views absences as one bucket, and this virtual potentially as a separate bucket. And you know, Fred throughout a couple meetings a month. That's pretty
Generous.
Pretty generous. But it's your guys' meeting.
I was the opposite of you.
And Jay's none. So we've got two ends here, and
I'll agree that they're separate buckets, but I'm in no hurry to change the remote policy either. I'm with Jay.
Okay, all right. I'm the last one who hasn't spoken, so I guess it's my turn. And I sit in the middle. And I actually do, in this case, sit in the middle. I agree with John entirely that, you know, and Cindy for that matter, sometimes there's things that are gonna come up. I don't necessarily know that we need to address and make a specific change at this point. Point in time, maybe we can take it on a case-by-case basis moving forward for a while. But as the new guy here, I really do appreciate sitting here and seeing all of your faces as well. I agree with Jay. Body language is something that I watch. Tones of voice and things of that nature I learn from. So I could go either way on this particular situation.
Mayor?
I would ask though, the current policy makes me police you guys, and I don't believe that's my role. And I would be more comfortable with a policy that gives you a number of days, just like the bucket for absences. And that way you're just emailing Brandy and I'm got a situation that's come up and I'm gonna attend next week's meeting remotely, and you know, maybe we put it in the consent agenda. I don't know, you're attending, it's gonna be your policy, but I really don't wanna be put in a situation where I have to ask you a whole bunch of questions and determine whether or not your remote request is a valid one or not.
That's fair.
And it's going to create hard feelings amongst between you and I, and that's I work very hard not to have those. So, Councilor Clausen.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how to get you out of the middle of this and respecting what other folks' opinion is. And I was thinking, well, make it mandatory that you're present 1 meeting a month. If we have 3 meetings a month, or excuse me, you can only be remote 1 meeting a month, so that you're required to be here in presence 2 meetings, and then if it's something that comes up that you need to be more, you'd have to get the council's permission to exceed that or something of that nature.
So
That way you've got kind of flexibility, more so than I think what we have currently, in my opinion, is pretty limiting.
I wanted to clarify on that because as some of the comments triggered this for me, the one of the 3 requirements is that there must be a fire, flood, earthquake, or other emergency relating to public health or safety. So a personal emergency would not qualify you for a remote attendance under your existing policy.
So I can't be the bad guy because well, I will be because I'm going to say no.
Right. I mean, we yeah.
Unless there's a fire or flood, okay.
Or a declared emergency, which we understand that the declared emergency may be lifted in the next few months.
Yeah, so it's pretty high bar. So I'm hearing 0, I'm hearing 1 a month, and I heard 2 a month. There really not hearing a consensus.
Well, down the middle again. I'll go with John's 1 a month.
Okay, so I got 2 there, and I got 2 there. Cindy, what's your, and don't go 2. don't go with Fred because it's gonna.
The truth is, I think that we should be responsible to try to be here, and that I am, but knowing that I have a situation to deal with and I want to be here, I think that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about, I'm out boating and I'm, attending the council meeting. It's not that at all. It's like Jay was tied up for a long, long time out east, and he was conducting his business, and he was able to do it because of remote. Well, the same sort of thing happens sometimes, and I'm kind of just saying, I think we really want to be responsible and be here. At least I do. So I don't know if we have to, or do we have to just present our request to the council and just say this is happening? And
I would maybe offer a compromise to what I've heard with the 1 meeting a month. Maybe it's a number of meetings per year, because an event that causes you, an out-of-state family member's ill, or a death or something, you might need to miss 3 or 4 meetings in a row, where 1 meeting a month isn't giving you the latitude. But you do still have the ability to miss your 4 meetings, though, 2 on top of that. So just sharing another spin on that. And John?
Well, I think it's important that whatever we do, it's no more than. It's not mandatory that we be virtual 1 meeting a month. It's just that if you're going to go virtual more than 1 meeting a month, then that's an issue. So for those occasional trips that you need to go, it's no more than once a month that you need to meet. It's fine.
You need to meet, or you can miss.
Need to meet remotely.
Yeah.
But yours is not a bad idea either, other than I guess I have to have another spreadsheet to keep count of how many am I down this.
That's what Brandy does.
Can I miss the next one?
How many do I have left?
Now you're putting me as the middle guy.
Councilmember Rosebanks?
I don't want to, we're not going to come to a consensus tonight, but.
I'm hoping you are.
Oh, we are? Well, okay, this may take a while. I think if I'm going to move, I think it would be total meetings per year as opposed to a month. The other thing is too, is if you are more remotely or doing it remotely, we still have, even if it comes to the council to look at, none of us, we're all aware of situations. But I believe what we're trying to avoid is something where somebody is doing it all remotely while they're, I don't mean to say gallivanting around the country, but you're right, Cindy. I mean, I plan my vacations around council meetings and stuff because we've made an intentional commitment to the city. And I think part of it is being here for city business. And emergencies, we all know will happen, and we all take those into account.
But Jay, if you've got a bucket,
yep.
And on an annual basis, what are you comfortable with for a number in that bucket?
Well, right now, Charlie, it's 4, right? And
Before for
For absences.
a
Correct.
separate bucket
For
for
remote attendance
remote
is
attendance.
0
I
unless
would
the.
probably do no more than probably 4 remote attendants. So 4 and 4.
4, okay? Councilmember Diener?
I would go with
You know,
8.
I'll harken back to the days pre-COVID where I think things were working pretty good in the old world. So, and I like that, and I think we have an obligation to be present. That being said, it is a new world. We realize that now we can tap into different resources and be remote. I'm okay with up to 4 a year.
4, and I heard Fred throw out 8. So I'm working around the room here. You want to be in the middle?
No, I've been in the middle too much. I think I could support 4 remote meetings a month.
A year. A year.
A year, I could support those 4 actually, but a year and then stick with our 4 total misses as well. I think that's.
Got 3
Yeah.
at 4. Is there a 4th?
I'm going with 8.
Sticking with 8? All right, I got 2 at 8. You guys you're gonna have to wait for Sean. I know where this is going.
But there's
Well,
business,
we could,
there's,
you know, we could all compromise and just hit it at 6 and be done with this. You know, you come up 2, we'll go down 2, and,
Okay, I'm the mediator here in the middle.
yeah.
I'm not
Okay,
there.
so I got a proposal for 6.
No.
Is there no?
I like
No.
4.
4?
And that gives us 8 total misses in a year if we have 4.
Because you can still miss more because of business. Business is outside of that. So-
This is different than remote meetings.
Yeah.
I think you should, personally, I think those are completely different. I
Yeah.
have 4
Alright.
misses for,
I think we've got this as far as we can get it. I've got 3 at 4 and I got 3 at 8. And Councilmember Kachardi is back in town in a week, and
Fine.
well, you know, he's gone.
I know.
Is this one of his misses?
This is one of his 4 misses. He's gone.
Well, no, it's not a miss because he's on business.
That's true.
It's
No,
not
he's
a
not.
miss.
This one's personal.
No, he said
Oh,
personal.
yeah, okay, personal,
This
yeah.
one's personal.
But he's had business ones that don't count.
Yeah. So, you're right. And this could give him an option when he's in business meetings, you know, business travel that he could attend, so. Because we want, you know, I think we want all of us to participate, and we want to be here as much as we can
Yeah.
be. But on the other hand, I don't want to see a situation that just happened in Bremerton this last year where somebody was deployed with their job and then they removed him from that person from the city council. And let's have,
That's punitive.
you know, some,
We wouldn't have that problem because it would be for business.
Yep. Yep, that is.
yeah, per our code, yeah.
They were punitive.
They have more drama than we do.
A lot of places have a lot more drama than we do. All right, I will circle back. I'll talk to Councilmember Kachardi, and we will discuss this again at the next council meeting at the end of the month. All right, last, no, 2 more discussion items, but they're related. So we got a letter from the county asking us to accept Veterans Park. It's in your packet. Based on the feedback we got from the community, I think I know what the answer from you, but I need to ask the question. How do you feel about this, council members, accepting the park from the county? So go ahead, Councilmember Rosa Pepe.
I'll go first and say there's no interest on my part at this time in accepting Veterans Park. I believe that, at least on my part, that it needs to be comprehensive of a parks plan. And also at this time, I believe that the county would be trying to give us a raw deal, and I'll leave it at that. So no interest
At this time.
at this time.
And that's kind of the tone of the letter that I discussed earlier today with Charlie. So, Councilmember Diener.
I would agree, although maybe I would word it a little differently, but I just don't think we're ready at this time. My question is, what else can the county do with it in the meantime? Because I think it is a gem in the rough when we have the ability to do something with it and maintain it. But I would hate I'd hate for us to lose the opportunity at the same time, so. I feel like after looking at some of the stuff that was in that packet, that there's not much the county can do with it, other than look at another jurisdiction to take it over.
They aren't gonna put a lot of resources into that park.
Right.
That's in the city. You know, we've probably taken the encampment's in pretty good shape. I think at this time, there isn't much there. We'll talk about that next, but,
So I'm comfortable sitting on this for a while, but, I'd hate to.
I think it needs to be part of a discussion with the Parks and the Recs levy. It's the maintenance,
Right.
The capital dollars are easier to get. It's the ongoing maintenance, and that park is bigger than all of the rest of our parks combined.
Mm-hmm.
We just simply don't have the human power
Right.
to take on that animal.
Yeah, we need to be ready to take that on and to do a great job with maintaining it, and we're not at that
How
place
could we?
yet with our public works and facility manager. I'd also like to see a little bit longer situation with them maintaining it correctly. They went in and did a great job getting it cleaned up. Well, let's maintain that for a while. But I think it would be a great asset to our parks. But I agree with Jay that I think it'd be, again, we should sit on it for a bit and implement that into our parks and property plan.
Councilman Clausen?
Yeah, I would agree with the sentiment here that we're just not financially in a position that we could take on that kind of an additional responsibility. I appreciate what the county did to deal with the problem that we just experienced, and appreciate them staying on top of it. But again, I just don't think we're financially in a position to be able to take on something like that and do it justice. And from what I read, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only option they have is keep it as a park or give it back to the state. And the state will figure out what to do with it at that point, but I just don't think we're in a position for it.
I agree. Councilman Chang?
The only thing I can add, and I agree with what's been said, is that I wish there was a way we could incentivize the county to do something better with it than they have. In some ways, it reminds me of Bethel, that they didn't want to improve it because it was going to be annexed by the city, and so they didn't. And the people of South Kitsap feel that money has been collected that should have gone to Bethel, but went to Sulphurdale. I mean, and this is not facts, this is just a feeling. But it worries me that this is a parcel that is owned by the county, and they have no incentive to do anything with it. It became the way it was because they probably put minimal resources. I hate to think that we have to go and use the stick all the time with them. Is there a carrot that we can do with them? I don't know. But
It's pretty limited. I mean, it has to be a park, or it has the money, or the property has to be turned back over to the state. And this, the county, like us, they don't have a parks district funding either. It comes out of their general fund, their park maintenance. And, like us, capital money can be obtained in grants, and we're considering a significant park impact fee, but it's only for capital. Councilmember Clausen?
And I'm just going to throw this out, and Fred, you made me think about this. We're talking about either or. Is there something in between where, not that we have a bucket full of money, but is there something that together the city and the county could look at doing something there that would benefit? I mean, I appreciate the letter indicating that it's in the city, but right on the line, the people that are on the other side of the line are county residents, so, but is there something in between? I don't know what that would be. We give them $1 for every 10 they invest or something.
Or maybe we apply for grant,
Yeah,
joint
maybe
applicants.
There's a joint application for some kind of,
So maybe
those are
there's that carrot in the letter we're proposing where, we'd
We'd like to explore what opportunities.
we'd love to see, improvements to the park, and we're willing to participate jointly with you.
Well, I would leave it more broad of just exploring opportunities, whether it be applying for funding or maybe they've got some other idea, but as opposed to just saying, no.
They gave us our idea. They want to.
Well, I know, but we're rejecting that idea, but we're coming back with, we don't want to just say, no, we don't want it, but we'd like to explore, are there opportunities that we could work together to something that would benefit both county residents as well as city residents?
Charlie, I see Charlie's wheels spinning over there. All right, so I don't think there's any, at this time, I think that's the tone of the letter. We appreciate your offer, but at this time, we're not in a position to accept that Veterans Park. And, we'd like to look for opportunities to partner with you to improve the park. And in the future, we may be in a different position.
Actually, in the future, it would be wonderful to have that park.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That is something we would work into our plan, because that only makes sense. It's just timing.
Yeah, and when you look at the survey that was taken, out of the top 5, and I'm not gonna be able to describe what the features were, but people were asking for, I think, a Boys and Girls Club building or something similar, a place for people to go for rec leagues, those kinds of things. I think 3 of those top 5 can be condensed into one structure, and that would be a great place for it, kind of like Pendergast.
YMCA. that
Yeah.
we've all agreed
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
It's a big piece of land that can accommodate a building and programs. It's just, we don't have a
Yeah.
funding source to do those things and offer those programs at this time.
They can be, economically generating once you start making them destination fields.
Getting a little late here, so we're gonna move on. Veterans Park, I mean, it's substantially cleaned up. I think it's gonna be something that we continually monitor with code enforcement. Are you comfortable with us removing this as a standing item on our agenda?
And I do have a report this evening as well. Yeah. So the code enforcement officer has been meeting with Jared Moran, the HART coordinator for the county, and getting periodic updates as to progress. Jared has advised that the county is taking the following continuous actions, and I wanted to let you know those. So they are cognizant that there is continued trespass in the park. There are a few tents that remain. All individuals who are residing in the park are being contacted on a weekly basis. Park staff is walking the park on a weekly basis along with a sheriff's deputy. The sheriff will read trespass warnings to whomever he encounters or he or she encounters when they are in the park, and they are asking them to sign a document acknowledging that they've been given notice that they're not supposed to be there. If they refuse, their name is being documented through the sheriff's office as having refused. Unclear what they're doing if they don't get identification or a name. They are advised of, each individual they encounter are advised of a process and notice that they have essentially a 1-week warning to remove their tent, and then they're following up and trespassing them on a weekly basis. So it's a weekly cycle that they've established. Again, they've had to do this a few times thus far, is my understanding, but they are keeping up with it. And the code enforcement officer noted that from 1 week to the next, she did see a noted improvement. Tents that were there 1 week were then gone the following week on that week cycle. So she saw evidence that this was being followed through with. But it will and is continuing to require active work by the county on a weekly basis to keep up with it.
Yes.
We don't talk about it.
If we have a problem with as our code enforcement officer elevates it, we may need to, it's our jam.
Alien spaceship? Like a microphone. Spaceship.
Vacuum.
Wow.
Oh, she solved it. Miracle worker.
It was the UFO landing on the top of the building.
The code enforcement case is still open and active, and so we continue to monitor under that code enforcement case. I know that the code enforcement officer is pushing towards closing it and seeing sort of an end. And if we, often what we'll do in the code enforcement world is have a voluntary compliance agreement or something that will stay the code enforcement action that then will allow us to re-trigger it, bring back any penalties from the preceding action in the event of a recidivism. So I think you're right. This is something we'll have to continue to monitor, and we are doing so.
We're going to continue to monitor it. I was just asking you guys' permission to take it off as a standing item. And if something, is happening that you need to be informed in, or if you want to ask questions, this is the forum. All right, we're moving on now to our council committee reports. Economic and Development Tourism, I know the last meeting got canceled, and it doesn't look like a next meeting date has been scheduled yet. Mr. Bond, I guess we'll work on that.
I was hoping it would be discussed tonight amongst the members and we could pick a date.
Before we head into our executive session, maybe you guys have a quick powwow and determine what a meeting date is. Pull your calendars out if you're prepared. Well, there's that. Okay. Well, that isn't going to work tonight.
Well, our next meeting was scheduled for
Monday.
the 20th, 19th?
Yeah, it's a Monday.
Yeah. It's
That's why we had to
okay. Okay.
further down the road.
Okay. So we're not going to solve that one tonight. Sorry. So it's going to need to be an email, and Sean's out of town, not monitoring email this week. He's on family vacation.
Okay, I think the email went out about a week ago, so it should already be out there.
All right. Utilities was supposed to be this evening, and it was canceled. We'll be bringing next utility. The major item is the utility rate structure, and we look forward to that conversation. We're doing a lot of work on that. So.
July 12th.
July 12th, that's right. Finance has been rescheduled from next week to the 27th at 3 p.m. Transportation Committee is next week. Chimes and Lights, have you met?
We did on Monday. It was mostly an update just to let us know what is all going on. And the big thing is that Janine has done a fabulous job with creating
Got land use meeting tomorrow. Lodging tax is not meeting till October. And is there anything to report on the Sewer Advisory Committee?
not until August.
Okay. Where are we on this agenda here? Mayor's report. I got a few things to share with you guys. I've been circulating those images of and most of you responded, of the welcome to downtown Port Orchard sign. And I think we settled on the version that was in the middle in the price, about $5,000 with the raised letters on it. And the only challenge now is that we've spent all of our sign money for this year. So the question is, we could remove, the planter box is in rough shape, but the sign's in really bad shape. We could remove the sign, or actually even remove all of it and put the sod in. Be nice to replace it with a new sign, but would you prefer, which would require a budget amendment for the $5,000, or would you prefer that we delay that and incorporate it into the next budget process and accomplish it next spring? So, Councilmember Diener?
Well, I wasn't raising my hand, but.
Were you scratching your head, and I thought it was.
So is part of this tied into the planter box and whether that should just go away? Is that what you're asking?
That is the proposal. We're gonna
Okay.
take the planter box out, the sign out,
Yeah.
plant sod, and mount a new sign there in that landscape strip there.
I'm happy with that.
Okay.
I like that.
Now the question is, do you want to wait, or do you want to approve an expenditure that NOAA would need to incorporate into a future budget amendment?
I'm happy with doing that as well.
Okay. And Cindy, Luke, you raised your hand next.
I think we should do it now. And $5,000 is not too much. I think could even be twice that next year. So I think it would be a good time to get this taken care of.
good point. The bid proposal could be higher next year. I see a thumbs up. Mark?
Can I ask for clarification? It's 5,000 for the sign, but there's gonna be more if we take
Our
out
guys
the,
will install the sign. It's 2 posts in the ground and,
taking out the planter box and all,
yeah,
okay.
and
All
our
right.
public works time.
Okay.
You're right, there is an expenditure there, but it's not dollars that
Yeah.
would require a budget amendment. It's public works time.
Is there a length of time that this cost assessment is good for?
It's a quote from a sign manufacturer. It's
Correct.
probably good
Typically-
for 30 or 60 days or, you know.
That might be something to look into, but if it doesn't exceed, that length of time commitment doesn't exceed into next year, then I recommend I go with Cindy, get her done.
It won't go to next year. It's gonna take them probably a month to create the sign. So, anyway, I didn't see Tony. Is Tony online? Okay, so we'll talk about that tomorrow at the managers meeting, that we want to move forward with replacing the sign, so. Did you have a comment, John?
No, I'm fine with doing it now.
Okay, all right. I need to report on a few personnel policy changes. One, updated drug and alcohol testing policies related to personal driving city vehicles and post-accident testing, updated substance abuse policies. Bottom line is, we don't want you to use alcohol or drugs while you're operating a city vehicle or equipment. That's pretty much in a nutshell. Or when you're out representing the city. So the comp time, we talked about that a little bit earlier, but unpaid comp time will be paid out in the first paycheck. Unused comp time, you can accrue it, and then in the first paycheck in December, we're going to clear the books so that we're not carrying anything into the next calendar year. We've updated our teleworking policy because someday COVID's going to go away, and we're going to allow up to 3 days a week for teleworking a week. Not all jobs are eligible for that. Some are customer-facing jobs, but and we have folks in the field, obviously, that aren't eligible for that. But we do have that accommodation available, and it's part of our space management solution, as we're kind of hot seating people a little bit, in particular over in Nick's operation, where we thought that temporary building would just be around for a few years, and now we've filled it up and then some. So parking enforcement, I just want to check in with this. We've talked to the finance committee last month about moving it out of the police department into code enforcement. While these two positions pay well, they lack benefits, which is causing continual turnover. Having these positions in the police department, they have very extensive and lengthy background check processes, a polygraph requirement, and we're spending more time hiring, putting them through their background checks and training them than they are employed at the city. It's not working, and that's part of the solution. So really, it's going to require us to modify pretty extensive modifications to our code that Charlie will begrudgingly do, but would need to happen. The biggest downside to this is if we move this out of the police department, our parking enforcement due to state laws won't be able to do handicap violations that'll have to be referred from parking enforcement to a police officer. Expired tabs or towed vehicles are all things that a parking enforcement person who's in a different division of the city can't do those activities per state law. So I just want to check in before Charlie spends $5,000 in legal from our legal fund to doing that. And that was really the recommendation from the finance committee to move it, but then we unearthed all these other little idiosyncrasies that we didn't think of as we tried to looking at the code modifications. So, Councilmember Chang?
Do we know how many incidences there were of expired tabs, handicapped, or towing?
Yeah, it's
Considerable or
expired
not?
tabs is considerable.
Yeah.
that's a big one.
They got mine.
Right? I got something worse for me the other day.
Yeah. So, yeah, you are, anyway, it's not something they'll be able to do. And I'm just being honest and about, that won't be a priority for our police department. There are so many other things from speeding cars that we're not getting, we're not, because we're responding to calls and things. So I'm just being honest that those activities will probably go without being cited unless it's something that's really egregious. So, Councilmember Rose Pepe?
I think, from my standpoint, if we don't have anybody out there, they're not doing it anyway. So I'd rather have somebody doing parking enforcement out there and transfer the position, realizing there's going to be some things that fall through the cracks, as opposed to the fact that we don't have anybody out there, so they're not doing any of the job. So that's
When that little
why-
cart isn't running around town, the behavior on the streets change, and in particular up around the county campus and our waterfront.
So, Charlie, I'm giving you work. At least I'm recommending we give you work.
I think it makes sense too.
Okay, I just wanted to check in before we start spending money, because I didn't want to spend $5,000 on Charlie's time, and then we bring the ordinance for you guys to change it, and you go, what were you thinking? So,
And you said those limitations are under state law?
yes,
Okay.
yes, they are. All right, Bay Street Reconstruction Project. I don't know if you saw the Facebook post, but we haven't officially been notified, but we're getting $1 million from the federal government. It's just however long it takes them to finish negotiating the bill and approving the budget. So Derek and I met with the Kitsap Bank folks, and that's, some of our naysayers were jumping all over the fact that they thought we were giving that money to Kitsap Bank. It's for the road. It's so that we can raise Bay Street. But they're a partner in this project, and that's why they were at the meeting, and they needed to have some assurances that this is for real, because they're spending serious money designing a building and preparing to build a building, and they want to know that there's a timeline to the improvements that are associated with it. So I just wanted to share that. And also, we were successful at KRCC in getting $2 million for the construction in 2026. And if we get our design and our right-of-way, there is no right-of-way, if we get our design completed and we're ready to move forward fast at this, it's possible for us to get moved up a year. There's a process for that if we're ready to go.
Where's the state in this discussion?
They're not opposing us, but they have, we can't get them to help us with a roundabout up here. So they haven't approved our designs because they're not completed. They haven't had, and Nick, you've been in those meetings. They're supportive of our project, but they don't have any money for us. Is that inaccurate?
Yeah, I think that the state has basically said conceptually this looks good, but you need to show your work in the design process to demonstrate that reducing speeds to 20 miles an hour and some of the other proposals are viable from an engineering standpoint. So no financial support.
We could make that a priority, but if I change, I don't think we're going to be successful there. And if I take the focus off of Sedgwick and they forget about Sedgwick to transfer that focus over here, I think we lose two opportunities, because I think
I'm not suggesting that you do that. I'm just suggesting that you remind the state that we're taking on this responsibility down here so that you can devote all of your time to the roundabouts at Sedgwick.
that's a good message to deliver. I appreciate that. And Josh alluded to the Joint Transportation Committee that I was appointed to, and I am the Association of Washington Cities representatives. It's myself, a representative from the Puget Sound Regional Council, the similar agency that's in the east half of the state, the Association of Counties, and then the four corners of the legislature, the majority and minority senator and the majority and minority House members. And the goal is and actually this was my first appearance on TV Washington too. So the state received $54 billion in funding from the Jobs Act over 16 years. And looking at historical practices when federal money's come down, it's been roughly a 60-40 split, state and local government. And that's what we're trying to achieve. The legislature, in its wisdom, this last session, though, took the first 2 years of this money to fund the transportation package that was approved this last year. One of my first comments when I learned that was, well, how do we, the 40% we lost for 2 years, and where in the next 14 years do we get that back?
Plus interest.
Plus, well, and so another participant in this meeting too is Roger Millar, the transportation secretary. He has a different spin on this, and actually, I'm not going to say this now. Anyway, there's a lot of money at stake. I would like to get us back to historical splits, and something that I'm advocating for is a swap program. Okay, the state has a $100 million project, and they got $60 million in federal money in it, and $40 million of their money in it. Okay, we get this $2 million award down here. It triggers a federal process. That's a big deal for cities our size and cities smaller than us when we get federal money. I don't see it as a big deal for the state to take our $2 million and turn it into local money, state money versus federal money, and just make their share of the federal pie bigger on their project. Of course, Roger Millar has a very different opinion on it and pointed out state law doesn't allow that. Well, gosh, we have 2 senators and 2 House representatives in the meeting. If that's the recommendation, I think there should be a way to get that done. Anyway, we had our first meeting. There's at least 2 more meetings. They're half-day meetings going to be up in the SeaTac area, and it's an honor and a privilege to be at the table. At the groundbreaking for Kitsap Transit, I snuggled up next to the governor and mentioned to him that this missing middle legislation that Josh was referring to, he was pushing that very hard. And I mentioned to him, I'm the incoming president for the Association of Washington Cities, and I want to work with you and your staff to find a path forward, because my goal is not to have this thing stuffed down our throat. Let's find a solution that everybody. He called me, and so it kind of shocked me. Actually, his staff called me and then put him on the phone and niceties, and so we started. The governor doesn't call you without he's got something. He's got he has a plan or a motive. That's what I was looking for. So it was missing middle, and then I interjected the ability for police officers to report, and then it ended with missing middle. So, and then he congratulated me on about to becoming the Association of Washington Cities president, and he said after I was elected I was going to have to solve the war in Ukraine and inflation, and I said I was up for the challenge. All right, now for some fun stuff, and then I'll wrap this up. So Janine provides me these minutes from 50 years ago in June 1972, our city purchased a new police car, and we had enough money to buy the car and to put the decals on it. And the minutes say that the chief was hopeful that he would get a grant to put a radio and lights and a siren on the car. So times have changed, fortunately. Also, 50 years ago, Clayton Memorial Park was dedicated to the city, and a check for ongoing maintenance was presented to the city for $82. This was a group of sailors from the USS Lewis and Clark submarine, homeported in Bremerton, and it was dedicated to the city. Clayton was a sailor that died in an accident on the submarine, and there's a plaque in his memory at that park. This summer, they're having their 50-year reunion. And so I've tapped a couple of you to help me serve some hamburgers at the park that day and have a barbecue. And if others want to join in, I'd love to have you there. It's in July. I'll get back to you. It's I want to say the 16th. It's on a Thursday or a Friday.
16th is a Saturday.
Okay, so it's just before that, I believe, on Thursday or Friday. 75 years ago, in 1947, the city authorized a new sidewalk on Bay Street, and it was likely the sidewalk that we have today that covers the wooden boardwalk on the north side of Bay Street. So to date, that's still hollow under there, and that concrete is sitting on top of that wooden boardwalk.
That's crazy.
More than 75 years. 100 years ago, in 1927, the city's street preservation program was $300. City Council approved the purchase of 400 yards of gravel to overlay our streets at a cost of 75 cents a yard. So all of our streets were gravel back then. So we're spending $1 million this year, and it's probably still not enough. So that ends my mayor's report. I talked way too long. We have department heads. Noah, did I take all your time?
Yes, so I have nothing to share. Thank you.
Nothing to share. Nick?
I've got a couple things. As you're driving around the city, you've probably noticed a few groundbreakings recently. If you're going out Lund Avenue on the north side of Lund, you'll see some clearing. That is the Riverstone subdivision, as well as the Bridgeview Apartments. And so both of those projects have broken ground. Also, up off of Mile Hill and the Whittier area, the Overlook Apartments have broken ground. And so there's quite a bit of excavation going on up there. 429 Bay Street, which is where the Lighthouse restaurant was located, my understanding is that they're going to be breaking ground, they think, in about 30 days. Also, the Haven townhomes on Sydney across from the Haven Apartments, which are nearing completion, that project is also expected to break ground very soon. And the last project that's under construction that you may not have noticed, but if you go out Figley Road and go into the new Mccormick Village area, phase 2 is those lots have been recorded and they've started building houses, but phases 3 and 4 to the north going into Bremerton are all cleared, and you can there are spectacular views of Mount Baker up there if you get a clear day. The other thing I wanted to report, our pre-app meeting backlog is really growing. We are now scheduling into August for pre-application meetings for new development. We are trying to squeeze things in where we can to not keep people waiting too long, but there is quite the queue. One notable project I wanted to mention to you is that Home Depot is back and kicking the tires on Port Orchard, and so we had a very productive meeting with them on short notice, and then they are also scheduled for a second pre-app meeting in August, but it seems like they are very motivated to get going on a store. Finally, there are three projects I wanted to mention. The McCormick Urban Village, where the commercial district is supposed to go at the new roundabout, the permits for clearing that site have come in for the city, and so they would like to break ground on that later this summer. And then the residential area surrounding that urban core is also in for a subdivision now at this time. So those are two projects that I know were big priorities for the city. And then just because I spoke to the Kitsap Sun today, they're probably going to be writing a story about Heron's View, which is the mixed-use project next to Kentucky Fried Chicken on Bay Street, which is about 108 units plus ground floor retail. And they asked about the Ramsey project at the corner of Ramsey and Sedgwick, where we have another 100 or so apartments plus ground floor retail in a mixed-use setting. So those are projects you may not have seen yet, but despite the doom and gloom on the news, things are still moving quite fast in our department. And that's all.
Charlie?
Nothing else to add this evening. Thanks.
Ms. Wallace?
Nick took all of my time. Sorry, I don't have anything else to add.
Ms. Lund, do you have any?
I do not, thank you.
All right. We unfortunately have a couple items to talk about in executive session. So Charlie, why don't you go ahead and read the recital there, if you could?
Yeah, absolutely. Pursuant to RCW 4230-110, Subpart 1, Subpart I, the City Council will hold a 20-minute executive session to discuss legal risks of a proposed action with legal counsel for the agency when public discussion could have adverse legal or financial impacts to the city. And the council will not take action following the executive session.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to check and see if there's any citizens who?
Well, what we should do that before we adjourn to our executive session. Are there any citizens? I missed the second citizen comment period. So you use the raise your hand feature if you'd like to address the city council.
Only?
Noah's the only one that's in the waiting room? Okay. I'm seeing all of those on the right side, but that's actually her PDF. So so I'll close the second citizen comment period. And
All right.
we're going to take a
Same
quick
statement as to the executive
2-minute
session
break-
still applies.
2-minute break, and